Marcus and Michael Thompson were more than just identical twins. They were mirrors of each other's strength, skill, and determination. On this particular evening in late September 2023, they were driving back from their mother's house in rural Georgia, their black Ford F-150 cutting through the darkness of country roads they'd known since childhood. At 32 years old, both brothers had achieved what many considered impossible. They had risen through the ranks to become elite Army Rangers, completing some of the military's most challenging missions across the globe. Yet looking at them in their civilian clothes, Marcus in his favorite navy blue hoodie and Michael wearing a simple black t-shirt, no one would guess they were among America's most highly trained soldiers. Their mother, Sarah Thompson, had raised them alone in a small house on the outskirts of Pine Grove, Georgia. That evening, she had insisted on feeding them her famous sweet potato pie, just like she did when they were kids. "You boys might be big-shot soldiers now," she'd said with a warm smile, "but you'll always be my babies who need feeding." The twins had spent 3 hours at their childhood home, helping their mother fix a leaking roof and catching up on family news. Sarah was proud of her sons but worried constantly about their safety, even though they rarely spoke about their military operations. What she didn't know was that her boys had completed over 50 high-risk missions, earning numerous commendations that they kept private. As Michael drove, Marcus was looking out the passenger window, his mind drifting to their latest training exercise. The brothers had a habit of communicating without words, something that had saved their lives more than once in combat situations. Right now, both were thinking about the strange truck they'd noticed parked at the gas station when they left their mother's house, a black pickup with tinted windows and out-of-state plates. The digital clock on the dashboard read 9:47 p.m. The road ahead was empty, with only the occasional farmhouse light dotting the darkness. They were about 20 minutes from their shared apartment in the city, where they'd moved to work as private security consultants while remaining active in the reserves. "Something feels off," Marcus said quietly, his trained eyes scanning their surroundings. Michael nodded, his grip tightening slightly on the steering wheel. Years of combat experience had given them a sixth sense for danger, and right now, that sense was screaming. The twins had faced danger before, but always in uniform, always in distant lands. Here, on these familiar roads, they were just two black men in civilian clothes, driving home after visiting their mother. They knew the statistics, had heard the stories, had even experienced their share of racism growing up in the South. But their mother had taught them to hold their heads high and to never let hatred dim their light. What most people didn't realize when they looked at the Thompson twins was that beneath their calm exterior lay years of intensive training. They could assemble and disassemble dozens of weapons blindfolded, speak multiple languages, and take down armed opponents in seconds. Their bodies were living weapons, honed through thousands of hours of training in hand-to-hand combat, stealth operations, and survival techniques. But tonight, they were just trying to get home. Michael adjusted the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of headlights in the distance. One set became two, then three. Marcus straightened in his seat, his relaxed posture shifting subtly into something more alert, more ready. "4 vehicles," Michael said calmly, his voice carrying the steady tone of a seasoned soldier assessing a tactical situation. "2 behind, 2 coming up on parallel roads. They're coordinating." Marcus pulled out his phone, checking the signal. 1 bar. They were in one of those dead zones between towns, where help would be minutes away at best. The brothers exchanged a quick glance, years of shared combat experience allowing them to communicate volumes in that single look. They weren't scared. Fear had been trained out of them long ago. Instead, their minds were already running through scenarios, escape routes, and response options. Their breathing remained steady, their movements economical and precise, as they prepared for whatever was coming. The Thompson twins had never gone looking for trouble, but they were more than ready when trouble found them. As the approaching vehicles grew closer, both brothers knew this night was about to become very interesting. What their would-be attackers didn't know was that they had just made a terrible mistake in choosing their targets. The situation was developing exactly as the Thompson twins had feared. The vehicles behind them were closing in fast, too fast for normal traffic on these quiet country roads. Michael kept their truck steady at the speed limit, his military training evident in his precise control and calm demeanor. 2 black SUVs, heavily tinted windows, Marcus reported quietly, watching the side mirror. "The other 2 are pickup trucks. One red, one dark blue. They're boxing us in. His voice carried the same professional tone he'd used during countless missions, assessing threats and planning counter moves. Michael spotted the turnoff to Old Mill Road ahead, a narrow, winding path that locals rarely use since the lumber mill shut down 5 years ago. In their childhood, the twins had spent countless hours exploring these backroads on their bikes. Now, that knowledge might save their lives. "They'll try to force us onto Old Mill," Michael said, his hands relaxed but ready on the steering wheel. "It's the perfect trap. No houses for 3 miles, poor cell coverage, and plenty of trees for cover." Marcus nodded, already reaching beneath his seat where they kept a basic emergency kit. The SUVs were now close enough that their headlights filled the truck's cabin with harsh white light. The pickup trucks had appeared on the parallel roads, matching their speed. It was a professional operation, the kind the twins had seen before, but usually in war zones, not on Georgia backroads. Suddenly, the SUV on their left swerved closer, trying to force them toward the Old Mill Road turnoff. Michael responded with the smooth precision of a trained operator, maintaining their position without showing any sign of panic or amateur defensive driving. 8 men minimum, Marcus observed, catching glimpses of the vehicle's occupants. Military or law enforcement training, judging by their vehicle positioning. He pulled out his phone again, quickly typing out a message with their location and situation. Even with poor signal, emergency texts had a better chance of getting through. The brothers had faced worse odds in places like Kandahar and Mosul, but this was different. This was home, and these weren't enemy combatants. These were Americans targeting other Americans. The thought made their blood boil, but their training kept their minds sharp and focused. As they approached the Old Mill Road turnoff, the attacking vehicles tightened their formation. The twins could now see their pursuers clearly, men in dark clothes wearing ski masks, some with visible body armor. This was no random act of road rage or simple robbery attempt. "They're well equipped," Michael noted, spotting tactical gear through the vehicle's windows. This was planned. His voice remained steady, but there was a hint of cold anger beneath his professional tone. Marcus felt the same controlled fury. They had fought for their country, only to be hunted on their own soil because of their skin color. The red pickup suddenly accelerated, pulling ahead of them and then slowing down sharply. At the same time, both SUVs closed in from behind, while the blue pickup maintained position on their right. It was a classic rolling roadblock, executed with military precision. "They're forcing us to make a choice," Marcus said, his mind already gaming out scenarios. "Either we take Old Mill Road, or we're going to have a collision." The brothers shared another quick look, their years of combat partnership allowing them to communicate volumes in a split second. Michael's lips curved in a slight smile, the kind that had made enemies nervous in far-off battlefields. "Then let's give them a choice of their own." His hands tightened slightly on the wheel as they approached the critical moment. The twins had spent years mastering the art of turning the tables on superior forces. They had learned that the best defense was often a surprise offense, something their attackers clearly weren't expecting from what they assumed were ordinary civilian targets. As they neared the Old Mill Road turnoff, the tension in the truck's cabin was palpable. The brothers' breathing remained steady, their movements economical and precise, the calm before the storm. Their would-be attackers were about to learn a harsh lesson about judging books by their covers. The next few seconds would determine everything. But for the Thompson twins, seconds were all they needed to change the game entirely. They had been in worse situations and survived. This time, they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for justice on their own home soil. Just before reaching the Old Mill Road turnoff, Michael Thompson made his move. Instead of turning or braking as their attackers expected, he executed a perfect tactical acceleration, catching the red pickup's driver off guard. Years of elite driver training kicked in as he expertly maneuvered their truck through the narrowing gap. "Contact in 10 seconds, Marcus announced, his voice carrying the same calm authority he'd used during countless missions. The twins could see their attackers' surprise in the sudden jerky movements of their vehicles. This wasn't how their targets were supposed to react. Michael pushed their truck forward, creating just enough space to slam the brakes. The maneuver forced the pursuing vehicles to scatter, breaking their carefully planned formation. It was a basic counter-ambush tactic the twins had practiced hundreds of times, but never on these quiet Georgia roads. The attackers recovered quickly, proving Marcus's earlier assessment about their training. The vehicles regrouped, forming a tight circle around the twins' now stopped truck. 8 men jumped out, wearing tactical gear and ski masks, their movements betraying military or law enforcement background. "Last chance to walk away," one man shouted, his voice carrying a southern drawl. He was tall, clearly the leader, carrying himself with the confidence of someone used to intimidating others. "Your kind don't belong on these roads." The Thompson twins exchanged a look. They had heard similar words before, but never from someone holding an illegal automatic weapon on American soil. Without speaking, they both reached for their door handles. "Look at these boys, thinking they're gonna fight back," another masked man laughed, racking his shotgun for emphasis. The sound echoed in the night air, but neither twin flinched. Marcus and Michael stepped out of their truck simultaneously, their movements fluid and controlled. They stood tall, their military bearing impossible to hide now. The leader seemed to notice something was off. Perhaps it was the way the twins positioned themselves, or how their eyes constantly scanned for threats while appearing relaxed. 8 hostiles, mixed weapons, no real formation, Marcus assessed quietly. "They're trained, but sloppy." Michael nodded slightly, noting how their attackers had clustered too closely together. A rookie mistake they'd never make in real combat. The leader stepped forward, his weapon raised. "On your knees, now," he commanded, expecting immediate compliance. Instead, the twins took 1 step forward each, their movements mirror images of each other. "You boys picked the wrong night to play soldier," the leader snarled, his frustration growing at their lack of fear. Another attacker moved forward, swinging his rifle toward Marcus's head. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion to the watching attackers, but for the twins, it was simply muscle memory. As the rifle came toward his head, Marcus moved inside the attacker's guard, his hands a blur as he disarmed the man with a technique taught only to elite special forces. Simultaneously, Michael had closed the distance to the leader, redirecting his weapon toward the ground with one hand while delivering a precise strike with the other. Both attackers went down before anyone could pull a trigger. The remaining 6 men stood frozen for a split second, a fatal hesitation in combat. The Thompson twins used that moment to full advantage, moving with the synchronized precision that had made them legendary in their unit. Marcus swept the legs from under 2 more attackers while Michael executed a perfect disarming technique on another. The night air filled with the sound of bodies hitting the ground and weapons clattering on asphalt. "Stay down," Michael commanded, his voice carrying the authority of countless battlefield operations. Some of the attackers, recognizing the tone of a superior fighter, complied immediately. Others were helped to this decision by precise joint locks and pressure points. Within 30 seconds, all 8 attackers were on the ground, their weapons scattered safely out of reach. The Thompson twins stood alert but relaxed, their breathing barely elevated. They had faced worse odds in actual combat zones. "The police are already on their way," Marcus informed the subdued attackers, holding up his phone. "We got through to dispatch before you made your move." He smiled slightly. "And we've been recording everything since we first spotted you following us." The leader, his mask now displaced, stared up at them with a mix of shock and dawning realization. These weren't the easy targets they thought they were hunting. These were elite warriors who had brought the fight to their attacker's doorstep instead. Red and blue lights began flashing in the distance as police cars approached the scene. The Thompson twins maintained their tactical positions, keeping the 8 attackers secured on the ground. Years of combat experience had taught them to never let their guard down, even when the situation seemed under control. 4 minutes until the police arrive, Marcus said calmly, his eyes scanning the surrounding darkness. Michael nodded, noticing how some of their attackers were exchanging nervous glances. These men clearly hadn't expected their night to end this way. The leader, now unmasked, revealed himself to be a man in his 40s with a distinctive scar running along his jaw. His eyes burned with hatred, but there was also fear there now, the fear of consequences he hadn't planned for. "You have no idea what you've stepped into," the leader growled, trying to maintain his authority despite lying face down on the asphalt. "We've got people everywhere. Police, government, business." Michael looked down at him with the steady gaze of someone who had stared down worse threats in actual war zones. "And you have no idea who we are," he replied quietly, "but you're about to find out." One of the younger attackers, barely in his 20s, started crying. "I didn't know it would be like this," he sobbed. "They said it was just going to be a warning, just to scare them." His words trailed off as the leader shot him a threatening look. Marcus knelt beside the young man, maintaining a safe distance but speaking in a firm, clear voice. "What's your name, son?" The young attacker hesitated before whispering, Tommy Roberts." "Well, Tommy," Marcus continued, "tonight you got a choice to make. What happens next depends a lot on how honest you want to be with the police." The other attackers shifted uncomfortably at these words. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder. Michael noticed one of the men slowly reaching toward his ankle. Without breaking stride in his conversation, Marcus stepped over and applied slight pressure to the man's shoulder. A small pistol fell from an ankle holster. "Nice try," Michael said, kicking the weapon safely away. "That's another charge to add to the list." The man cursed under his breath, his backup plan foiled by the twins' vigilance. The first police car arrived, followed quickly by 3 more. The officers emerged with weapons drawn, taking in the unusual scene before them. 8 men on the ground, most still in tactical gear and masks, with 2 calm, unarmed black men standing guard over them. "Evening, officers," Marcus called out, keeping his hands visible. "I'm Marcus Thompson. This is my brother Michael. We're both Army Rangers, and we got a situation here you might be interested in." The lead officer, a veteran sergeant named Williams, approached cautiously. His eyes widened as he recognized the Thompson name. "The Thompson twins? Sarah's boys?" When they nodded, he relaxed slightly. "Your mother makes the best sweet potato pie in 3 counties. As more officers secured the scene and began collecting weapons, Sergeant Williams listened to the twins' account of what had happened. His face darkened as they described the coordinated ambush attempt. "We've had reports of similar incidents," he admitted, "but never caught anyone in the act. These boys picked the wrong targets tonight." He looked at the Thompson twins with newfound respect. The young attacker, Tommy, started talking as soon as the officers reached him. Despite threatening looks from his companions, he spilled details about their organization, its members, and previous attacks. The leader's face grew increasingly pale as Tommy revealed name after name. State police arrived 20 minutes later, followed by FBI agents who had been investigating a string of hate crimes across 3 states. What had started as an attempted ambush was quickly turning into a major break in their investigation. As the attackers were loaded into police vehicles, Sergeant Williams approached the twins again. "You boys could have handled this differently," he said quietly. "Could have used lethal force, given the weapons they had. Nobody would have questioned it." Marcus and Michael shared a look before Michael responded. "We've seen enough killing overseas, Sergeant. Tonight wasn't about revenge. It was about justice." The FBI agents requested the twins come to their office the next day to make formal statements. As the scene cleared, Marcus and Michael finally got back in their truck. They were tired but satisfied. Tonight, they had fought a different kind of battle, one for their own community, on their own soil. The war zone had come to them, but they had met it with the same skill, discipline, and restraint that had made them elite warriors. As they drove home, both brothers knew this was just the beginning of a larger fight for justice. The next morning, Marcus and Michael Thompson sat in a conference room at the Atlanta FBI field office. Special Agent Sarah Chen spread photographs across the table, surveillance images showing some of their attackers at previous crime scenes. "Your incident last night helped us connect a lot of dots." Michael examined one of the photos showing their attackers' vehicles at a gas station. "We noticed the black pickup at our mother's local station before all this started," he said. "They must have been following us for a while." Marcus nodded, adding, "Their operation was too coordinated for a random attack. They knew our route, our timing. Someone had been watching us." Agent Chen pulled out another file. "That's what concerns us. The leader you captured, James Whitaker, is a former police tactical team member. He was dismissed 3 years ago for excessive force, but maintained connections within several departments." The twins exchanged glances. This explained the professional quality of the ambush attempt. "How deep does this go?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Deeper than we initially thought," Chen replied grimly. "Tommy Roberts, the young man who confessed, has given us names of sympathizers in local government, law enforcement, and private security firms. Some of these people have access to surveillance systems, personal information, and tactical resources. Michael leaned forward, his military training evident in his focused attention to detail. The weapons they carried weren't standard civilian models. Some had modifications that are restricted to law enforcement and military use. Exactly, Chen confirmed. We traced several weapons to police evidence rooms. They were supposed to have been destroyed after being confiscated in criminal cases. Instead, they were diverted to this group. The conference room door opened, and FBI Director of Civil Rights Division, James Morrison, entered. His presence indicated just how seriously the Bureau was taking this case. Gentlemen, Morrison addressed the twins. Your actions last night may have helped us crack open one of the largest organized hate groups in the Southeast. But it also means you're now potential targets for retaliation. Marcus straightened in his chair. Sir, my brother and I have dealt with threats before. We're not going to hide. Morrison nodded appreciatively. We're not asking you to hide. In fact, we'd like your help. Your military background and training could be valuable to this investigation. You want us to work with the FBI? Michael asked, surprise evident in his voice. As civilian consultants, Chen explained, your experience in counterterrorism and tactical operations could help us identify other members of this organization. Plus, you've already proven you can handle yourself if things get dangerous. The twins considered this proposal. They had planned to keep living their civilian lives quietly, but last night had changed everything. This was a different kind of fight, one happening right in their own backyard. Tommy Roberts is willing to testify, Morrison continued. But he's scared. Says there are people in the organization who will kill to keep their secrets. We need to move fast before they can destroy evidence or silence witnesses. Marcus looked at his brother, seeing his own determination reflected back. What's our first step? He asked. Chen spread out a map marking locations of previous attacks. We've identified 3 training compounds where the group conducts weapons drills and planning sessions. We need to gather evidence proving who's involved and how high up this conspiracy goes. These compounds will be well guarded, Michael observed, studying the locations. They'll have lookouts, escape routes, probably underground storage. Just like the compounds we dealt with overseas, Marcus added, but this time we're protecting American citizens on American soil. Morrison watched the twins analyze the map with professional precision. So, are you in? The Thompson brothers shared another look, their decision already made. They had sworn an oath to protect their country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. This threat was as domestic as it got. We're in, they answered simultaneously. Agent Chen smiled for the first time that morning. Good, because we start tomorrow. And gentlemen, this operation needs to be by the book. We want arrests and convictions, not just disruption. The twins nodded seriously. They understood perfectly. This wasn't a battlefield where enemy casualties were expected. This was about bringing criminals to justice, about protecting their community through legal means. As they left the FBI office that afternoon, both brothers knew their lives had taken an unexpected turn. They had trained to fight America's enemies abroad, but now they were joining a different kind of battle, one for the soul of their own community. 3 days after their meeting at the FBI office, the Thompson twins sat in an unmarked surveillance van, monitoring activity at the first compound. Located deep in the woods of northern Georgia, the facility masqueraded as a private hunting club. But the brothers knew better. Movement at the east gate, Marcus reported quietly, adjusting his binoculars. 2 armed guards, carrying modified AR-15s. He watched as the men patrolled the perimeter, their movements betraying professional training. Michael was studying live footage from tiny cameras the FBI had planted around the compound's perimeter. They're rotating guards every 2 hours. Military precision. He pointed to a screen showing vehicles arriving. That's the 3rd pickup with supplies today. Agent Chen sat behind them, coordinating with other FBI teams positioned around the compound. Our informant says they're planning something big. Weapons stockpiles growing daily. The twins had spent the past days helping the FBI understand the compound's security measures. Their combat experience had proved invaluable in identifying vulnerable points and potential threats. There, Michael suddenly said, pointing to one of the screens. A familiar black pickup was approaching the gate, the same vehicle they'd seen at their mother's local gas station. That's Whitaker's second in command, Derek Morrison. Heavy, but he's careful with it. Could be explosives or sensitive electronics. His years of handling military equipment made such details stand out. Agent Chen immediately radioed other teams. They had enough probable cause now. The combination of identified suspects, weapons, and potential explosives met their criteria for action. All teams prepared to move. Chen ordered. Thompson brothers, you're with Alpha Team. Remember, we need clean arrests and preserved evidence. The twins checked their FBI-issued tactical gear one last time. Though they weren't agents, their expertise had earned them places on the entry team. They moved silently through the woods, approaching their designated position. Just like Kandahar, Michael whispered to his brother, referring to a similar operation they conducted years ago. Marcus nodded, but they both knew this was different. These weren't foreign terrorists. These were Americans who had chosen hatred over harmony. The FBI's tactical team spread out around the compound. The Thompson twins positioned themselves near the east gate, where they'd spotted the weakest security. Years of combat experience told them this would be the best point of entry. Execute, came the command over their radios. What happened next was a masterpiece of coordinated law enforcement action. Flashbang grenades created confusion while FBI teams breached the compound from multiple points. The Thompson twins moved with practiced efficiency, helping secure the east sector. Inside, they found more than expected. The compound wasn't just a training facility. It was a command center. Computer servers hummed in underground rooms, containing what would later prove to be detailed plans for attacks across multiple states. Clear. Marcus called out, securing another room. They found maps marking targeted locations, churches, community centers, and civil rights organizations. The scale of the planned attacks was staggering. Michael discovered a room filled with police uniforms and badges from various departments. Chen, you need to see this, he called over the radio. This was evidence of how deep the organization's law enforcement infiltration went. Within an hour, the compound was secured. 27 arrests were made, including 3 former police officers and a state government employee. The Thompson twins helped process the scene, their military experience helping identify hidden compartments and secret storage areas. You were right about that duffel bag, Agent Chen told Marcus later. Plastic explosives, enough to level a building. They were planning something within the week. As the FBI teams gathered evidence and loaded prisoners into transport vehicles, the Thompson brothers stood watching. They'd prevented what could have been a devastating attack, but they knew this was just one compound of 3. Good work today, Chen said, approaching them, but our informant says the other compounds are being cleared out as we speak. They must have had warning systems we missed. The twins shared a knowing look. This wasn't over. It was just changing shape. The organization would adapt, go deeper underground, become more careful. But now they had proof of how dangerous these people were, and more importantly, they had names. We'll find them, Michael said confidently. People like this always make mistakes. Marcus nodded in agreement. And when they do, we'll be ready. The night was falling over the compound, but for the Thompson twins, this was just the beginning of their new mission. 2 weeks after the compound raid, Marcus and Michael Thompson sat in a secure FBI computer lab, analyzing data recovered from the servers. What they found painted a disturbing picture of an organization far more sophisticated than anyone had suspected. Look at this, Marcus said, pointing to his screen. They got informants in 12 police departments across 3 states. He scrolled through a list of names and positions that made Agent Chen's face grow increasingly grim. Michael was working through encrypted files they'd finally cracked. They were planning to target the Civil Rights Memorial Center during the upcoming anniversary celebration. Governor was supposed to be there, along with hundreds of civilians. The brothers had been working 18-hour days, putting their military intelligence training to use in a way they never expected. Their ability to spot patterns and identify tactical plans proved invaluable to the investigation. Morrison handed them a file. We found these in Whitaker's personal computer. Photos of federal agents, including some in this office. They've been watching us while we were watching them. Classic counter-surveillance, Michael observed, studying the photos. These weren't taken by amateurs. They had professional help. His years of military intelligence experience made such details clear. Suddenly, Marcus straightened in his chair. Wait a minute. He pulled up a series of financial transactions. Look at these payments. They're being routed through a security consulting firm, Sterling Defense Solutions. The name meant something to the twins. They'd been offered jobs there after leaving active duty, but had declined. Now they understood why the company had been so persistent in recruiting them. Sterling Defense employs former military and law enforcement personnel, Chen said, typing rapidly on her keyboard. They have contracts with multiple police departments and state agencies. Perfect cover for recruiting and training, Michael added. They'd have access to sensitive information, secure facilities, and weapons. He paused, remembering something. Wasn't the company's CEO a former FBI deputy director? Morrison nodded grimly. Robert Sterling, retired 3 years ago. Started the company with government contracts worth millions. He looked troubled. This goes higher than we thought. The Thompson brothers began cross-referencing Sterling Defense employees with known members of the Pure Path Patriots. The overlap was significant and disturbing. They're not just a hate group, Marcus concluded. They're a private military company with a racist agenda. They've got training, resources, and connections in law enforcement and government. Chen's phone buzzed with an urgent message. Tommy Roberts was just found dead in his cell, made to look like suicide. The young man who had agreed to testify was now permanently silenced. The room grew quiet as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about stopping a few racist attacks. They were up against an organization with roots deep in the system meant to protect citizens. We need to move carefully, Morrison warned. One wrong step and they'll bury the evidence deeper than we can dig. He looked at the Thompson twins. You two are still officially civilian consultants. They might not be watching you as closely. Marcus understood immediately. You want us to go undercover? The idea made sense. They had the military background that Sterling Defense looked for. It's dangerous, Chen cautioned. If they discover your real purpose? We've handled worse, Michael said confidently, though he knew this was different from their military missions. Besides, they already tried to kill us once. Might as well return the favor, legally, of course. Morrison outlined the plan. The twins would apply to Sterling Defense, using their real backgrounds but hiding their connection to the FBI investigation. Their goal would be to gather evidence linking the company to the Pure Path Patriots and their planned attacks. Remember, Chen emphasized, we need proof that will stand up in court. These people have expensive lawyers and friends in high places. The Thompson brothers nodded seriously. They'd fought enemies abroad, but this enemy was different. Hidden behind respectable titles and legitimate businesses, protected by the very system they were corrupting. When do we start? Marcus asked, already thinking through their approach. Tomorrow, Morrison replied. Sterling Defense is holding a recruitment event for veterans. Perfect opportunity to make contact. As they left the FBI office that evening, the twins knew they were heading into dangerous territory, but they'd sworn to protect their country from all enemies, even ones wearing business suits and badges. 3 months after infiltrating Sterling Defense Solutions, the Thompson twins were ready to make their move. Their military background had earned them positions in the company's Special Projects Division, exactly where they needed to be. Meeting in 10 minutes, Marcus whispered to Michael as they passed in the hallway of Sterling's corporate headquarters. Both brothers had spent weeks gathering evidence, recording conversations, and documenting the connection between the company and the Pure Path Patriots. Robert Sterling, the CEO, had taken a particular interest in the twins, often inviting them to private strategy sessions. Today's meeting was different. They were finally being brought into the inner circle. As Sterling laid out his plans, the brothers maintained perfect poker faces. The CEO revealed everything: the nationwide network of racist operatives, the planned attacks on civil rights organizations, the corrupt officials on their payroll. It was all being recorded. We're building an army, Sterling explained proudly. An army to take back this country. He pulled up detailed plans on his computer, not realizing he was providing exactly the evidence the FBI needed. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the building. Sir, a security officer burst into the office. FBI teams approaching from all directions. Sterling's face contorted with rage as realization dawned. He looked at the Thompson twins, who were already standing, their cover no longer necessary. "You," he snarled, reaching for a hidden weapon. The brothers were faster, their military training taking over. In seconds, they had him secured. "Robert Sterling," Marcus announced formally, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, terrorism, and about a dozen other charges." Michael kept Sterling pinned while reading him his rights. Throughout the building, FBI teams were arresting Sterling defense executives and seizing computers. The evidence the Thompson twins had gathered over 3 months led to the identification of over 200 members of the Pure Path Patriots, including police officers, judges, and government officials. "You have no idea what you've done," Sterling spat as agents led him away. "This country needs us." "No," Michael replied calmly. "This country needs healing, not hatred." Agent Chen arrived with Director Morrison, both looking satisfied with the operation's success. "We got them," Chen announced. "The evidence is solid. They're not walking away from this." The Thompson brothers watched as agents led away the people who had tried to kill them that night on a dark Georgia road. It felt like years ago, not months. "Your mother called," Morrison told them with a smile. "She saw the news. Says she's baking your favorite sweet potato pie to celebrate." The twins grinned. Their mother had worried constantly during their undercover assignment, but she understood why they had to do it. Later that evening, as the FBI processed the last of the arrests, Marcus and Michael stood outside the Sterling Defense Building. News crews were arriving, but the brothers stayed in the background, letting the FBI handle the press. "Think we got them all?" Michael asked his brother. Marcus shook his head. "Not all, but we got enough to make a difference. The rest will think twice before trying something like this again." Agent Chen approached them one last time. "The Bureau wants to offer you both permanent positions. Your work here was exceptional." The twins shared a look before Marcus answered. "Thank you, but no. We got other plans." Those plans included starting their own security consulting firm, one that would work with community organizations to protect civil rights gatherings and train minority groups in self-defense. They would use their skills to build bridges, not walls. Besides, Michael added with a smile, "Someone needs to keep an eye on things back home. Make sure no one else gets any ideas about ambushing people on dark roads." As they drove to their mother's house that evening, the Thompson twins felt a sense of completion. They had faced racism in its most organized and dangerous form, and they had defeated it not with violence, but with intelligence, patience, and unwavering dedication to justice. "You know," Marcus said as they pulled into their mother's driveway, "we never did get to finish that sweet potato pie from the first night." Michael laughed. "Well, this time we can enjoy it without worrying about anyone following us home." Their mother was waiting on the porch, pride shining in her eyes. Her boys had always been warriors, but now they were heroes too, not just to their community, but to their country. The Thompson twins had proved that the strongest weapon against hatred isn't more hatred, it's justice, served cold and professional, just like they'd been trained to do.